What about When I Get to Heaven? Because that Cube, oftentimes, especially in this era of his career, um, if you look at like Us on Death Certificate, When I Get to Heaven, toward the end of his albums or at the end of his albums, he would have these songs that either summarized or kind of looked back or took a different stance than a lot of the rest of the album.
Sure.
So when you heard When I Get to Heaven in the midst of all of what Lethal Injection was, what did you feel?
I mean, I figured that was his point of view. That's how he was feeling. I wasn't mad at it. I wasn't mad at it at all.
All right. And then where did you or why did you since you have sample issues sometimes the Inner City Blues on there?
That was him. So if it all depends, it was in my contract, you know, if I add the samples, then I pay for the samples. If he add the samples, he pay for the samples. So he paid for the samples. And you know, he has good ideas. Cube has he's a visionary as well. And a lot of times what artists and producers don't realize, in the contract, it says that they have the right to add and do whatever they need to do to the composition to bring it to what they call market value. So if he wants to add some stuff or whatever, hey, as long as he pays for the samples and you know that's what's gonna make it come out, I'm with that.
Gotcha. And then with this, you said you had a manager. So at this time, with O.F.T.B, with Coolio, and now Ice Cube, you had a lot of big placements, big songs, especially Lethal Injection going platinum and stuff. What what was changing for you creatively and business wise?
Business wise, the contracts were good, you know, for the first time I had someone that could look over the contracts and make sure that was right. But on the other hand, he was more corporate. He couldn't pick the phone up and make those calls. So a lot of times my work would come from me being in the studio, just leaving the door open, going to the water cooler. And the next thing you know, people are sticking their head in the door like, hey, who did the track? So that's how a lot of my work would come. So it didn't grow as much as it could because you know that he couldn't pick the phone up and call the favors. So it's always a yin and a yang to it.
Gotcha. And this around the time with Lethal Injection that you did the awesome concept productions as well?
Well, I always had awesome concept productions since I was DJing. That was my DJ company name as well, you know. But I didn't really. Once you get in, it's all. Once you get to writing songs and all of that, it's all about you registering your songs in your name, kind of like the name of your company. Unless you planning on starting a label with it, it's kind of just a name to describe you or whatever. But I
Okay.
really didn't. I didn't try to, you know, go into being a record company or nothing like that. I did try to, you know, work with some artists, but let's be honest. After working with Playa Hamm and them, it just seemed like everybody else were just light years behind with the pen. You know, they just couldn't. They couldn't crank it.
Understandable. Now, you have the huge success with Ice Cube with Lethal Injection, and then the next year, Coolio comes out finally with It Takes a Thief, and he did, excuse me, and he had Smoking Sticks on there as well, another co-production with Dobs the Wino. So I wanted to get from you with Dobs, what made you guys work so well together?
Well, we both started off as DJs, and he was inspired by a guy by the name of Young D out of Carson. You know, he would go to his garage. It was whoever had equipment. So him and I working together, he would bring his. I never had a whole lot of equipment. I didn't get 1200s and drum machines and all that till I was into my 20s. But he always had equipment. So that's what brought us together after we were introduced by my god brother who went to Banning High School with him. So we started with the DJing and we start programming. And you know, by that time we just gelled. And the thing that was unique about that, we were from two different neighborhoods. And that's why I always tell people, put the music first. Either you're gonna be street or you're gonna do the music. That never got in the way with us. I mean, two different neighborhoods, totally. But he didn't have no problem coming to my house, scooping me up to go to his house. He didn't have no problem coming to my house. And we just we just gelled like that. I learned stuff from him. He learned stuff from me. We both went to school for broadcasting. I mean, for recording engineering. So, you know, it was just only right. We grew together.
Okay. And then did you do the Smoking Sticks around the time of Sticky Fingers, or was it later?
They both on the same album.
No,
Yeah,
no,
they
I
both.
mean when you made them, when you
Yeah, they
recorded.
both are around the same time. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Because I was just curious if you saw any growth or difference with Coolio as an artist, but if you did them around the same time.
Coolio was just, he's way more slick with the pen than what people think. You know, he taught us a lot of stuff from being around the Mad Circle and D.O.C and them, you know. So he was always sharing those experiences with us.
Gotcha. And what did what could you tell that he really learned from being in the Mad Circle?
I mean, choosing samples, how to put his hooks together. He would hum, like whenever you give him a beat, he would sing different songs to it. I noticed that one day he would sing different known songs to it. And I guess that was his way of picking up melodies, which I learned later, you know, find a melody that goes with it and see if you can change it around and make it your own. That was big.
That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with Tupac and Lord knows Tupac had seen you working with Don Jagwarr,
Yes, sir.
then you get with Tupac. So at this point, this is 94, 95 when he would have been making Me Against the World. And at this point, he hadn't blown up in the sense of this worldwide international superstar, but he was still a platinum artist and in movies and still big.
Yes,
So
sir.
for you, what did you notice about his work ethic or how he handled things that was similar or different to other artists?
Now, funny, we met Tupac back when we were doing Straight Up Watts. He was in Studio A, we were in Studio B. And it was crazy because I can remember him doing Keep Your Head Up and we could hear it through the door. I'm like, why they speed the sample up like that? That sounds crazy, not knowing later on it would have became as big as it did. But to answer your question, his work ethic was just unheard of, bro. It's like I think he would use the acting technique. You know how actors will write their script down, they will write their lines down so they can remember them. So he would write his rap, but the way he would go in there and project it is like he had been knowing it for weeks, you know what I mean? And it was like once the song was over, all right, next song. He didn't want to hear what he just worked on or whatever. You might get to listen to it one time and then he's on to the next. And after that, he just really made you stay on your toes, you know, because his work, his energy was just on another level. The average person, when I was with Don Jagwarr, we would work on one song for 8 hours. This dude will do four. And you could just hear him through the door that it'll just keep changing and changing, next beat. And we still working on the same track. But he just had this go ahead that was just incredible.
And that brings me to a question in the sense that I've been in both situations where I've seen both approaches. So what are the pros and cons do you think of doing stuff the fast way like Tupac did and the slower way like Don Jagwarr was doing? What are the pros and cons of that?
Um, Sometimes when you're putting your raps together fast like that, you'll use some of the same setups or some of the same words, you know, but maybe in a different context. With Don Jagwarr, his thing was this is the opportunity I've been waiting for in a lifetime for a lifetime. And I don't care if I spend my whole budget. I just want my album to be a classic. Now that didn't sit well with Cube because, you know, Cube was like, hey man, let's keep it rolling. I think that's what kind of made them kind of start having differences or whatever because you know Cube comes from the era where you paying for studio time, you only got so many hours or whatever. Once you've been in that situation, you never lose that. Me, I still have the I always kept that 4 hour mentality in my head when you're going to the studio where you only could afford 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, you need to lay the beat, lay the rap, and try to get some kind of a rough mix. You see what I'm saying? So you never lose that once you've had to record under those kind of guidelines. So I think that's, you just don't, to me, do your pre-production before you go to the studio. Once you get there, then you kind of on autopilot. You just kind of just automatically knows what's going to happen next.
Okay. Makes sense.
Sure.
And after Me Against the World with the Gridlock soundtrack, getting, at least on the release side of things, getting back with O.F.T.B, how from 92 to 96-ish, when this was coming out, what was going on with you? Were you still working with them all the time? Were they in and out?
Yeah, they were still my guys. We once they moved over to Death Row, first track we did was Hot One on the Murder Was a Case soundtrack, but it didn't make the album, but it made the cassette. Cassettes were just starting to be on their way out, but a lot of people, when they lift weights or whatever, they still had that box radio. A lot of people lift weights to it. A lot of people told me when they were in prison, they would do their push-ups to it or whatever. So we never stopped working. They just kind of, to me, I thought they were on enough of a path to where I didn't think they needed to go to Death Row, but that's where they chose to go. And, I just rolled with it.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
It would be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
What's that 5 on your MTV back with NWA?
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.